Hello, ladies and gents. Hope you're well. Hope you had a fantastic week so far. This week, I wanted to share a great interview I did with Ben. Now, Ben is called the Culture Guy, and funny enough, he talks a lot about culture in workplaces and how it can actually increase your motivation for your staff, increase their well-being overall in their businesses or their business that they're working in, but also allows your business to be more profitable, which who doesn't love? Who doesn't love more money and being profitable? So I hope you took value from this episode, and I'm now going to have a hand over to Ben to talk a little bit more about what he does, and I'll see you in just a moment.
I'm Ben Drury. I'm otherwise known as the Culture Guy, and I work on leadership and culture in organisations. So I take everything I've learned on the rugby field through many years of playing and coaching, and I put it into the boardroom and teach people how to build champion teams.
Thanks, Ben. I really appreciate the time. And, the reason I wanted to bring you on, because I think it's something which is so overlooked nowadays in business, which is like, I think it comes from, I guess, the principle, which is, I think, now pushing a little bit too far, but is the principle of, like, we have to care about our employees. We have to help them, be motivated for work, etc., etc., etc. But, I mean, I guess the first question I would have, or the audience would have, would be, what role do you feel culture as a concept, as an overarching, actually plays in maybe a corporate environment, or, maybe smaller businesses can play? Because a lot of people who listen to the podcast are, scaling businesses, people who want to grow, people who want to adapt, people who want to change. So maybe they don't have a team right now, but they want to build that culture. They still want to understand what it is, so that when they do and when they can bring in people in the business, whether that's freelance or actually bringing them into the business as in an employed job, they already know what that culture and what those values are going to be. So just to reiterate the question, what role do you feel culture actually plays when it comes to growing a business, I guess is the question there.
It's foundational. It's absolutely foundational. Whenever two or more people come together, you are going to have a shared culture. You're going to have a shared understanding of the world. You're going to have a shared view of what's important and what's not. And that is going to affect everything that comes after it. Your hires, the offices you do, you use, your dress code, the way you run meetings, everything is going to be affected by that culture. So it is absolutely foundational. And the thing is, you've got to look at it in three ways. One way, it's the right thing to do. We've got to create places where people actually want to come to work. Two, if you want to hire the best talent, you actually have to look after them and you have to care about them, because they're not going to come and work for you if you don't. And three, when you get it right, you make a hell of a lot more money. What else do you need?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Is there a level of skepticism? Because I imagine there is, maybe from a older, because I've heard it when people talk about mental health, and I've heard it before in networking, and I've heard it from other, I'm sure you had as well, where business owners go, well, just come in and do the job.
Right? Yeah, there's a level of, I wouldn't say skepticism. There's a level of understanding is, I can't be asked with that. I pay you some money. You should do what I pay you for the money. What they fail to realize is they are not paying for results. They're paying for time, because our whole system is essentially based on give me 9 to 5. And we have become so good at looking busy and doing nothing. You want to pay for that? You go ahead. You carry on paying for that. Me, I want to pay people to come in and give me their best 8 hours of the day. And in order to do that, and in order to make sure that happens, I have to create a place where they're self-motivated. They want to come in. They believe in what they're doing. That's the way I get them to come and give me their heart and soul, and not just their time. 4 hours of which is doing something productive, 4 hours of which is making tea and coffee and chatting with their mates.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think, especially as we're looking at potentially a situation economically where people are going to potentially be having to shift into jobs, whether that's temporary or potentially full-time, switching careers, etc., etc., I think it opens up an interesting question about, firstly, from an employer's point of view, about the culture that you provide for your employees, but also understand that sometimes when you're in an interview scenario, you can be the best qualified person in the room, best person for the actual technical spec of the job, but if you're going to have a synergy that's going to knock on the culture or the confidence, or you're not going to work in the team, or you're going to create problems or conflicts, it could actually cost you the job. Right, and I think that's something which I've been quite aware of, and something which I think a lot of people should be quite aware of. I mean, what advice would you give to someone who maybe is technically very good from a technical standpoint of they're actually incredibly good at whatever the job title may be, whatever the very good marketer, the very good sales, whatever, whatever you're being hired to do. But they have some, I guess, personality quirks, I'll call them, that potentially might, be their Achilles heel when it comes to potentially trying to pivot into, I need to get a sales job. I need to go get a more corporate job because I can't crack this business, is too stressed, so I want different life balance. Or do you just want to make a change, right? Sometimes the reality is actually you just want to make a change in your life. It's actually got nothing to do with, you fell out of love with the business or it isn't working. It's just, actually, you know what? Actually being a business owner isn't all what it cracks up to be, and I'd rather have a 9 to 5. Thanks.
There's two sides to that coin. One is, I might be the most skilled person for the job, but actually the culture of the organization is such that I'd be bloody miserable. And I could be better than anybody they hire to do the role, as you say, but I'm just not going to have fun doing it because of the kind of environment it is. Don't take those jobs. Please don't take those jobs for 2 reasons. One, because you will be miserable and your mental health will suffer. But 2, as an employer, don't hire those people because they will, excuse my French, they will bugger up your culture. One bad apple, the whole lot goes, the whole barrel goes. And you've got to be so careful. So find somewhere that you fit, find somewhere that you have fun working, find a group of people that you actually want to work with and do the job they're asking you to do. That's the way to kind of, like you say, you might have been in business. Personally, I'd be a lousy employee. I would really struggle to get a job somewhere because I'm so used to working for myself. I'm so opinionated. I know what I'm doing and I see the world in a slightly different way, which is what makes me so good at what I do. You put me in a corporate environment as an employee, I'm going to go stir crazy in there. So you've got to be careful what you choose and where you go back to. But find somewhere that actually you have fun doing it.
Yeah, and I think, for me, I was very fortunate because I found what I want. I knew I wanted to work for myself from age of 8. I knew I wanted to be in the creative field by age of 12, right? So very lucky, right? I'm fully aware that just doesn't happen, right? But I think for me, that was like, yeah, okay, I'm not going to get on with bosses. Yeah, okay, I can kind of get why this isn't going to be a thing. So for me, it's just been like, okay, build for the last 15, 20 years. And it's one of those things where I think sometimes we, it reminds me of, as you were just talking, it reminds me of a Snoop Dogg quote. And basically the crux of the quote is, you can be continuing to grow and continuing to move forward, but you can't take the people around you or take the people that you care about with you if they don't want to come with you, right? But they definitely can pull you back down. 100% they can pull you back down. And I think sometimes we have to make a difficult decision, whether that's personally or professionally, to cut off people in our lives or let them grow away or well, either physically make it very clear to them we're done, or just naturally through your actions tell them that you're going to move apart. That doesn't mean you won't come back together at some point later on, and it doesn't mean that it won't work, blah, blah, blah. But what it will mean is it will say, I'm going on this journey, I know what my values are, I know what I'm worth. Either step up to the plate and do that, or stay where you are. I'm going to continue on this direction either way. And I think when it comes to an employee relationship, you have to treat it with a high level of value exchange, because I think traditionally we were just like, we're going to give them a job and their salary is the thing they work for, right? I think that's where it comes from.
They should be really pleased that we've given them a job and grateful, and they should sell us their children and whatever else you expect.
But that comes from, I guess, because, we saw it at the back end of the pandemic where people were just basically not taking jobs that were borderline questionable and, etc. The wages weren't there or whatever the benefit. And it's not because they weren't grateful for the job and there wasn't opportunity. It's because the jobs needed to step up, because the reality of the fact is we're all able to create internet businesses. We all have loads of options. We all have loads of skill sets. We all have access to technology. There is infinite money everywhere once you understand how it works. So do you really need to go and get a dead end job? Yeah, for a period of time, yes, maybe, right, to fix a problem or financially. So, but the problem with dead end jobs is they have barely any career path, if any, and also you're treated just as a number and a kind of a moving around on a spreadsheet. From talking from personal experience as someone who was in dead end jobs, right? But I mean, I guess the question there from your side is how, if there is a culture of it's dead end, it's there is no path vision, there is no motivation, you're here to do a job. how can, if an employer decides, a manager decides, an upper management decides, whatever, we're going to change the code, we're going to change it, Ben, we're going to change it, outside of hiring you, how can they do that? How can they start that process? How can they start creating an environment that allows their employees to understand they're not what they were, and or create a break point?
Well, you've got to start by going back to why are we here? What do we exist for? What is the purpose? And we've got to frame it in a way that actually explains what we're putting out into the world. What good are we doing? For example, restaurants. I get a few calls from restaurants going, we can't get the staff. We're trying to hire wait staff. We cannot get the staff. Can you come and help us? I'm like, stop asking for wait staff. Stop hiring people to wait tables. Hire people to come and help families make memories that they'll talk about in 20 years. Hire people that will come and help a couple have the night of their lives. Yeah, you're going to have to wait tables and you might have to deliver drinks, but that's not what we're doing here. We're creating memories. Part of that is making the rest of it invisible. And you've got to be bloody good at that. And but we can train you in that bit. What we want is a people person that is able to spot and understand and read a situation and speak into that situation in a way that elevates people, makes them feel better when they're down, cheers them on when they're, all that kind of thing. Those are the people we want. And actually, you've got to remind your staff what we do. So instead of saying, I need you to come in, do an extra shift waiting tables, it's like, no. We've got these people in tonight. This is what they're coming for. Go out and make happiness. Go out and bring joy. Come on, let's do this together. That's worth getting out of bed for.
And I think also, though, it kind of in some ways, you need to understand what motivates your people, right? Because not everyone's motivated by transactional money. Some people are, don't get me wrong, some people are. But for me personally, I'm motivated by what meaningful change I can make with the money, or what meaningful change I make into the world.
Nobody, right? I'm going to put this out there. Nobody is motivated by money. People are motivated by what they think money gives them. It's never the money. It's never the money. Even the wealthiest stockbrokers in the world, it's about kudos and power and whatever it might be, ego. It's never ever about just the money.
And I think it opens up a larger question, I guess, in some ways, which is like, if you don't know personally what's motivating you, because we're taught in society that you need to get good grades. Traditionally, go to school, get good grades, then go to uni, get good grades, then get a good job, then settle down, have kids. That's what society tells us is the norm. That's what success looks like from a traditional point of view. Blah 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 blah, etc. Right? But how do we find within all of that, or some of that if we did some of that, or all of that if we did all of that, whatever? How do we find what motivates
It's
us?
a good question, and we have to remember that people tell us that, and they talk about the word security, get a good job, and it's like, there is no such thing anymore. I'm sorry. There's no such thing as job security. You watch now, you got Microsoft and Google who have made billions and billions of pounds in profit over the last few years. They're laying off thousands of people. Why? Why are they doing that? There's no need. They've got the money to pay them. Why are they doing it? Where's the loyalty gone? Where's the one way? It's all one way. So don't ever buy into the knowledge that you've got to do this for security. There is none.
Yeah, I mean, and to give the audience some context, on the day of filming, it was announced that 10,000 people, I saw it on LinkedIn this morning, 10,000 people from Microsoft will be fired and laid off. And Amazon's doing the same, Google's doing the same.
Not because they don't have the money.
Now,
why are they doing it? Because the market expects them to be able to do that to make more money so they can get bigger bonus. I don't know.
Well, I mean, of course we don't know. We're not the CEO of Google. We're not the CEO of what etc. Right? But what my prediction and what my input on it would be, if you're a company of that size, the Coca-Colas, the Microsofts, the Amazons of the world, you have to answer to stakeholders on a 90-day term. Why have they also cut their marketing budgets? Why also are they scaling all their budgets down? Because they have to make sure the profit is the same, because they're reliant on stakeholders, which is one of the reasons why the question of should you go public as you scale a company or not go public is a large one, because when you go public, yes, it gives you access to a lot of finance, yes, it gives you a lot of options and lots of credibility and so on, but are you selling the core reason about why you started the business in the first place? Are you selling, monetizing, creating a difference? So then you just become, oh, I'm in a job again. And, just a really quick story. When I worked in the dead-end jobs I was fully aware that the phone could ring and I would be made like that, gone, job gone, job gone. right? So I was like, this illusion of job security is an illusion. That's exactly what it is. Because if the phone can ring at any day, at any time, and my job goes like that, there is no security. It's actually more secure for me to build a skill set which I know how to generate income for my business, and or I know how to create a brand and personal brand and all these things. That's going to serve me more. Because if you're in a dead-end job, you're the guy at X brand. You're the guy from Y brand. If you create your own thing and you create your own legacy, your own business, your own name, your own reputation, that stays with you. That means a heck of a lot more than, oh, you're the guy from insert chain, insert brand, insert etc. Right? And this is, I think, what people, yeah, and I think that's what people sometimes, I guess, in some ways misappreciate or misunderstand at the moment in regards to the reality of our economic situation. It's got nothing to do with the fact that people don't want to work. It's because it's the fact that the people who you're saying don't want to work have options of making more money than you're willing to give them, and or your culture.
This is it. A lot of people go, oh, they're so lazy. People don't want to work these days. I'm like, no, they don't want to work for you. That's all you can say. You haven't inspired them to come and help you build what you're building, because either what you're building is an utter waste of time and nonsense, or they don't trust you,
or it doesn't align with their own morals, right? There's a lot of people who I know are slightly younger than me that are now coming up who are teenagers and etc. And they care about the morals of a company. They want to know, do you care about?
And this comes back to that 90-day. The whole thing about that, I am now answering on a 90-day cycle to the markets, and what they want to see is growth. Nothing else.
Growth at any cost. By the way, growth at
somewhere growth has to stop. We can't have infinite growth. It's a mathematical impossibility. So somewhere along the line, we've got to stop. We've got to break that cycle and stop answering to people that just want to make money.
And also, what growth in what? Growth in what respect? Because surely, what is your driving factors? Personally, for me, it's fulfillment, right? If me scaling down the company makes me more fulfilled, I'll scale down the company, right? But that's what
this is. Speaking to a colleague of mine recently that's actually gone through that process of realizing what she wanted to do with her business and scaling it down, and really trying to figure that out so that she gets what she wants out of life. And that is way more important than building something massive.
And look, I'm all for building an empire, and I'm all for building massive things, and etc. But I'm also fully aware that not everyone's going to want to do that. I'm also fully aware that some people want to work 3 days.
And not just for the sake of building something massive. And then you want to do it because actually building something massive has a positive impact to the communities and the society in which we operate, to the customers we work with, to the staff we hire. That's why you want to build big, because it has the impact.
And or it gives you the legacy, and or it gives you your own personal reasons about why. And it's not just about, personally anyway, it's not just about a paycheck, right? It's about, as I say, I'm driven by meaningful change, right?
Absolutely. That is what we should be doing. And that's what the generations, like you said, the generations coming after us, more and more are going to expect.
Yeah, and I think there's going to be a correction soon, whether that's an economic one or an egotistical one or a culture one or a business one, whatever. I think there's genuinely, and I had this thought at the time of recording anyway, yesterday, I was like, okay, there's certain things that I'm noticing happen that's like, okay, so I can see how that falls in 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, 12 months. I can see where the problems are going to be there because of how they're scaling, or because they're not lean, or because it could be loads of reasons. I can sit here until Christmas, but I guess the point is, if someone is listening to this and they're going, shit, okay, I don't have culture, shit, actually I'm not cultivating a good environment for someone to work with, actually, I'm not being transparent, I'm not talking about, look, we've all run businesses, we've all had bills that are overdue, but normally the reason why there are bills are overdue is because we've also got bills that are overdue, right? I would believe and I would hope that no one who has the money sat there going, here, I know I owe you money, I'm going to give you money, would deliberately hold on to the money just because. I'm sure there. Look, I'm sure there is, but I've
lost business because of it. There are people out there.
100%. But for a moral point of view, my point of view is very simple, right? There's a difference between you can't pay and you won't.
But that difference is courtesy as well. I don't have a problem with clients who are struggling to pay for whatever reason. As long as they phone up, we can have a conversation and say, well, look, let's figure it out. I don't want you to go out of business, because then I don't get paid, but I don't want you to get a business because you're doing good work. Let's see if we can figure it out. What I don't want is just to be bloody ignored and not paid my bills.
Well, exactly, and that's what I think, and that's why for me, like a high level of value comes into the transparency element in everything I do, right? And it's like, actually, look, if something's changed, the outcome doesn't matter to me. As long as you're transparent with how you articulate that. So if there's an issue with a bill, if there's an issue with this, if there's an issue with that, whatever it may be, right? If, you know, you don't even my friend at me, fine, okay, let's have that conversation, right? Let's say, okay, well, is it a deal breaker? What's going on? What happened? What have I not given you? Etc. But if you don't open the conversation, you're not willing to communicate, and you're just going to go silent or act weird or whatever, or like act in a passive aggressive way or whatever, you know, or do this kind of like mismessaging stuff, it's like, it's just not helpful, and or just flat out ghosting or ignoring, right? And it's like, for me, it's like, how do you move that forward in culture to say, because actually I think it's the job of the entrepreneur, the business owner, if there is that culture there, to say, no, that's not what we're going to accept, right? No, we're not going to accept that. No, that's actually, we value transparency here, we value communication here. And you know, everything that I've talked about in business and everyone I've spoken to in business, but in general in life, the reason why everyone who is successful is successful is because they know how to communicate.
And I think you're right. We have to understand what are the non-negotiables, what are the lines we are not going to cross. And then we have to, even when it hurts, draw that line in the sand. Even when it's painful, even when we have to go to somebody we owe money to and say, I don't have the money, I want to pay you, I don't have it. How can we do this? Because that hurts. It's painful. It's embarrassing. You feel like a bit of a failure. But if you want, like you say, if you're transparent and you're open and you want to have those relationships with your clients, those are the conversations you've got to have, even when it hurts. And to be frank, a core value is not really a core value till you start to pay for it. And those are the moments you have to pay for it.
Yeah. And this is, I think, where it kind of opens up the question of like, is someone just saying what their core values are, and then actually when it comes to actions, right? And there's been a lot of realities in my life in the last year that's been like, the person's actions or the business's action, whoever it is going to show you exactly who and what they are, right? And that's nothing against them personally. Like, maybe it's their upbringing, maybe it's how they're conditioned, maybe it's whatever, right? It's not like shitting on them as a person. It's just, look, the reality is your actions are going to show me what the reality is. Fine. And then if their actions change, that might change the reality and the outcome, right? But I think for me, I mean, I guess in some ways, let's drill a little bit more down into like, if there's a business owner who's maybe had someone, let's say they've got a team, right? And they've had a team of a couple of people, and they're noticing some shifts in core practices, or they're not being as transparent, or there's something going on, etc. How would you recommend people, like, because as a business owner, you'll see it, right? You'll see it in your team. The team will go from synergy works, everything's working, everyone's happy, perceivably, blah, blah, blah. Something's happened, something's changed. How does someone tackle that? How does someone go through that and go, right, how do we move this forward? Because if you don't, surely it can spread, and surely it creates a negative feedback loop in regards to the culture, right?
How do doctors work? First thing they do is they sit down and they try and identify all the symptoms, and then they use that list of symptoms to try and pinpoint the cause of those symptoms. And it's the same thing as a business owner. You've got to go through and figure out, well, what is going on here? What are the things that are going wrong here? They're your symptoms. Those are the things that we need to look at. So, right. Why are they going wrong? I've got a team of 4 people. Okay, one person, their father's died recently. Everything's gone to pot in their life. They are not stepping up. Everybody else is having to pick up the pieces. And some of the stuff that they do, nobody else can do. So it's all gone a bit clunky. Fine. Let's deal with that issue. Let's find somebody for 3 weeks to replace them while we send them away, give them the time off, give them time to get sorted, whatever it is. But let's have that conversation with them. It might be as simple as that. It might be something where actually there's something going on that people don't want to talk to you about. In that case, you need to get a third person in to come and talk to them, try and figure out what it is. But what you've got to do is find out what that initial problem is and figure out, and you've got to be really clear. We're finding this out. This is what we're going to do to fix it. These are the lines we're not going to cross. And when you start to be that clear and transparent, and you actually start to step up, and when people do cross the line, they're sanctioned, the weight gets thrown off. Everybody starts to come back and go, okay, it's fine. It's fine. You know, it's being fixed. We trust you that it is being fixed. You're not just giving us we need to pretend we're like this, even though behind the scenes, I know we're not. Actually, you've got to step up and start behaving accordingly. make it work properly. But ultimately, that's what you've got to do. You've got to diagnose it, and then you've got to be really clear on what you're doing to solve it, and you've got to stick to your guns.
I think to an extent that comes back to the my door's always open management style bit, right? When I think in some corporate and people I've spoken to is like, that's a trap to basically get HR to sue you or to fire you, right? I mean, what would you say in answer to that? Because I think there's generally some cultures that people go, yeah, I would hope that my employees can come and talk, or my friend or whatever can come and talk to me. Genuinely, not because they feel like they're going to be reprimanded or etc., but because we can fix the problem, right? Yep. But there's also some that are genuinely like, yeah, I say that, but actually that's not what I mean. What I'm saying is I have to say this because, right? I have to be seen to be saying this.
My view is, be honest, be truthful. If you don't want it, don't offer it. But then you've got to set up a system where they don't need to. For me, I would hope that anybody I work with would be able to phone me up and chat to me. But my hope is also that actually 9 times out of 10, they wouldn't bother because they'll solve the problem themselves. And if we build a culture where they are trusted to solve the problem, then we build a culture where they're allowed to make mistakes. They're allowed to go one way and adjust so they don't need to have all the answers before they try and solve a problem. Then actually 9 times out of 10, it doesn't matter how open my door is, nobody's coming in.
Yeah, I think that's the important bit. Like, especially in a corporate environment, you should give your team, your people, the confidence to try and fix the problem, and not be because And this is one of the things that, one of the dead-end jobs I worked in was Greg's, and this is one of the things I actually took from Greg's, and it's actually really, really good idea and actually a really good thing in their culture, right? Their culture has issues, right? We won't necessarily go there, but some of the good things in their culture is like the fix it now principle, which is they put the customer at the heart of what they do. Great, fantastic. So if there's a problem, I don't have to go to, let me go talk to the manager to see if I can give you this refund or give you this thing for free. No, I have a button on my till that allows me to fix the problem there and now. It's called fix it now, right? The point of that is I now have to then go to my manager and explain what happened.
And if you do that 14 times a day and it's all your mates, they're going to have questions. But if it's a genuine customer that's got a problem and you've solved it and it's cost the company £1, nobody's going to mind.
Absolutely. I mean, as I say, like the point of why you have to go and tell your manager or tell your higher ups is so that it can be checked, so you're not duping the system, so to speak, right? But the reason why I mention it, and it's a very good example of like how you can put a system in place that's very simple and gives the employees, the people who are on the front line, talking to customers every day, serving customers every day, the ability to fix a problem without the let me go talk to the manager problem, because the manager's got other things to do, number one. Number two, that eats up time, that eats up resources, which in turn means actually that costs the company even more money, right? So if I have to go and bother my manager, who could be on doing something more important for the growth of the company or whatever, actually I'm costing the company money because the customer's going to be unhappy because they're having to wait. Also, I'm also costing the company money because I'm having to go talk to my manager and stop them from doing whatever they were doing, if that maybe is serving a customer or whatever they were doing at the time. And that's why I think the key point, you have to build cultural based things inside your organization and a culture to believe if that person makes a mistake, their job isn't on the line. You have to give them a level of safety to say, look, you can make mistakes. We're here as a team. We're here as a unit. We're here as a collective to get to the position where you are going to be doing the job pretty much all the time as I expect it to be done and to the quality we expect, and we're here to serve our clients. We are not here as a like competitor-esque in the friendly competition is one thing, but like when it gets a bit more vile or a bit more bleh, right, is where I think the issue is. I mean, what kind of, I guess in some ways the question there is, what red flags could either other employees or entrepreneurs or business owners look for that potentially could skew their culture or potentially could cause a snowball effect inside their culture that could be problematic for them? Is there specific things like that you could see?
No, but what you've got to do is you've got to be measuring the right things. So, for example, if, one of our values as an organization is people can do amazing things if we are cheerleaders and not critics. Now, that is really important. So for us, knowing that every conversation we have, every interaction we have, people go away feeling better than they arrived is really important to us. So how are we measuring that? And if we start to see the opposite effect, that is a problem. So we've got to be measuring against what we say is the non-negotiable important things in our organization. Just trying to think of other ones. Another one is everybody makes tea. Actually, if at the end of a week I know I've not made a cup of tea that week because I've been too busy, I expect my employees to start taking the mickey out of me. I expect them to go, "Where's my cup of tea?" They've got permission to do that because that's how we measure it. And all of a sudden, if it goes 2 or 3 weeks and I've had 3 weeks of them take the mick, I'm like, oh my word, I need to stop. I need to book in some time one afternoon to go around, make tea, talk to everybody, engage with people on that level. So you've got to be measuring the right things, but you've got to know what those core values are. And everything outside the core value, there's room for mistakes to be made without it being a disaster.
Of course. No, of course. I mean, I think let's say theoretically that someone comes into the job and, they have great culture. They fit the culture, great, cool. And then it's not really a life event. It's not really something that happens, but they slowly shift. Maybe it's not right for them. Maybe they've got some resentment around the job. Maybe they've had a disagreement with someone in the office, etc. What role would you say the culture of that environment, that business, that reality, plays in either escalating that situation to cause something more dire or more drastic or more like, I need to disciplinary you, I need to fire you, blah, 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 whatever, or could de-escalate that situation passively, I guess, in some ways? What role would you, just to reiterate the question, what role would you say that culture plays in that reality? Because, look, the reality is, economically, everything's going to get more stressful for every single person on the planet right now, okay? Whether you're a business owner, whether you're a job, whatever. If you're a business owner, you're stressed because you want and need to make more money to make sure that the company stays around, okay? Which means passively, you might put more pressure on your employees, which in turn means if you're an employee, you might have more pressure from your boss, okay? So, and that's why I'm asking that question, because I think the reality in the foreseeable future is it's going to be rough for a lot.
Yeah, and culture plays a massive impact in all those situations. Firstly, if you get your culture right, and everybody knows what it is, and everybody understands what's important and what's negotiable, and it's a safe place. I know where the lines are, and I know that if I make a mistake inside the lines, I can have those conversations. They're safe conversations to have. We can talk about it. If I make a mistake outside the lines, I know that's going to be a harsh conversation. Everybody knows what the rules of the game are, which takes the pressure off everybody. Because even though your boss gets stressed, even though times, etc., they're worried about stuff, everybody knows the rules of the game, and there's no moving goalposts. Where we've got a problem is when you've got toxic people, the goalposts move, they're stressed, they try and do this, and they try and do that, and it's your fault. And then yesterday you were supposed to do this, but now you're supposed to do that. And that is where it gets painful, because from one minute to the next, nobody knows what emotional turmoil they're going to have to face. So being really super clear on your culture alleviates a lot of that. In terms of kind of the disagreements in a situation like that, certainly in the culture we build is all about, well, actually, if I'm having an argument with somebody, my main concern about this argument is getting to the other side where we're both still talking and we're both still having fun. And if both people are playing in the culture and know where the cultural lines are, you both know I'm not arguing with you because I want you to feel bad. I'm arguing with you because I'm genuinely passionate about the robust result we're going to get out of this. It's not about you. And therefore, that all that kind of impacts how that argument is played out. We are all going to have arguments. I love my kids to bits, but boy, do we have some rows sometimes. But those rows are all based on and within a framework that they know we love each other and we want the best for our kids. They know the arguments I'm having is because I'm trying to cheer them on, not because I want them to feel small or I want to be better than them or I'm trying to make myself feel big. And when everybody understands the culture, you can operate in that space. So even disagreements, they're going to get solved well.
And I think it kind of, it brings back in general, like everything in life, but right, it's like saying, look, me and Ben are still going to care about each other. We're still going to have this conversation, even if we disagree, right? Me and Ben continuing our professional relationship will happen no matter what the outcome of this conversation. Fantastic, right? So once we've established that, I'm not worried about, what if I say this? What if I do this? What if I do to Ben? Because Ben's just agreed with me and we both agreed categorically that our professional relationship will continue no matter the outcome of this argument, discussion, whatever, right? We might find things that go, actually, okay, I disagree with Colton on this matter. That's fine. That's cool. how are we now going to work through the fact that me and Ben don't see eye to eye on this matter? How are me and Ben going to work through the fact that, yeah, we don't see eye to eye on this. Yes, this might cause a bit of a conflict. Yes, this might be a bit of a conflict. But if we both work on it, it won't be a conflict. Because we're both going to say, I disagree with that, but I can see where you're coming from. Da, 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 da. And then you can still move things forward. And I mean, that's an analogy you can use in any relationship ever in your life. But in a business context also, I think you have to think about what is the time that you spend investing in the relationships in your team that then have a knock-on effect to the business productivity, which in turn means what does that actually tangibly make you money? Because when we talk about business, what are we saying? Making money, right?
Oh, well, we are gonna disagree now, Carlton.
No, okay, hold on, no, hold on. In a simple term, you have to make a certain amount of money, right?
Yes, but is it about making money, or is the money about allowing you to do what you're trying to do?
I think it gets to a limit, right? I mean, there's a psychological study I'll quote here, which is like, money can't buy happiness within principle, within reason. Right, I think the rough estimate was around £75,000 a year. From that point onwards, money does nothing.
There is the other analogy is money doesn't buy happiness, but I'd rather cry in a Mercedes than on a bike. But the way I build businesses is, yes, they have to be self-financing and they have to make a profit. It's the same as oxygen. Do you live to breathe, or do you breathe to live? If I got you to hold your breath right now for 2 minutes, at the end of that 2 minutes, the only thing you'd be thinking about is, yeah, I need to breathe, I need to breathe, I need to breathe. You wouldn't be thinking about lunch. You wouldn't be thinking about tomorrow. You wouldn't be thinking about what you're doing tonight. You wouldn't be thinking about you'd be thinking about, can I breathe? Because if I don't, I'm going to pass out shortly and maybe die. Once you've taken a few breaths and you've got your breath back and we start a conversation again, you've forgotten. You're not worried about oxygen anymore. You're thinking about tomorrow. You're thinking about your lunch. You're thinking about your business. That's what money should be like in a business. That actually, you should be, yes, you absolutely have to make money to stay alive, but it's not the reason we are in business, or it shouldn't be.
No, and this is something I think we'll agree on, which is like, okay, I'm an entrepreneur, or I'm running my own business because it's better than what I would be doing otherwise. Right? For me, I'm not saying it's better overall, as we described earlier. For some people, having a corporate job is better.
It works for you. It gives you what you want. It provides for you and your family and gets you the life that you want to. But you're also putting some good into the world in the way you go about your business. I'm pretty sure there are some media companies out there that I wouldn't want to work with.
Yeah, I mean, again, like some are, especially in the media space, it's known as a space of questionable morals at times. I'll put it that way. And I think sometimes, there's a difference. I think for me anyway, especially as a media company owner, that says you can articulate and you can showcase something neutrally and you can talk about things. And people have asked me, I have conversations all the time. What's your political view? What's your this? What's your that? I'm like, I'm not here to play politics, right? If you want to know my politics, come into my personal life and we can find out my politics.
Go out to the pub, have a pint, and we'll thrash it out.
I'm not here to play politics. What I'm here to do is point out, especially in my case, is to promote Salisbury, the place I love and the place I care about and I want to showcase. But also, number two, to show other business owners how easy and how valuable potentially video could be. Not because I profit necessarily from it, but because it could be a really, really valuable exercise for them to do for their own journey in regards to growth, but also the opportunities that could come from doing so, right? Why should you be on video? Why should you have a personal brand? Why should you do this? Is that educational piece of saying, hey, I did this and these are the things that came from it. You might want to try it as well, because that's a great idea. But I think it builds back into the culture because, again, these are all fundamental values of why one does what they do, right? What's your driving factors? I know, for me, family, love, control, and fulfillment are high on my tier of values. So me making a career decision that removes control, love, and fulfillment, maybe not a better, if I made that decision, I wonder why I'm not as happy as I was. I wonder why I'm not as fulfilled as I was. I wonder why there might be issues. Well, I'm not in line with what are my driving factors, right? And it's the same in any relationship that you have with people. Look, the one thing that's for certain is death, taxes, and change. They're the three things that are in life that are gonna happen either way, right? It's then about how do you deal with the change element, because death will happen whether you like it or not. Taxes will happen whether you like it or not. Sorry, but they will. So the only thing you can actually like think about how you actually change or how you adapt or how you is the change element, right? Okay, so how are we going to deal with change, right? People are going to, as I say, and as we've already found, there's conflict, there's disagreement, etc. So how are we going to deal with that change, right? It's not saying I'm going to change my view to no. It's is me and this person willing to have that conversation, willing to work on it, and if not, that actually tells you a lot about if you are and they're not. That tells you a lot about them, not about you. And I think, I mean, I was just gonna like give you a workplace analogy to sort of build on that. I mean, in a scenario where that does happen and someone is, you go to someone and say, hey, this thing really annoys me about you or whatever, and we have this conflict. Me and this person have this conflict, but I don't feel like they're willing to have the conversation. At what point do I go? I've got to go to my boss. I've got to go to whoever, hierarchy, etc. How do you tackle that? Because in a personal environment, it's a little bit different because you can be like, okay, clearly this is not working out. I'm going to walk away, whatever, fine. In a workplace environment, you don't have a choice, right? You've got to work with them. You both are working in the same company.
Yeah, and again, comes back to what are the cultural norms? How is this dealt with here? Not what do we stick on the wall and what do we say are the cultural norms? What are the behaviors right now in this situation that's going to get me the best outcome? Actually, in some organizations, unfortunately, sitting down, shutting up and doing what I'm told is what's going to get me the best outcome. Some organizations leaning the narrative towards me and going across to my boss, it's going to happen. In very few organizations, taking that person for a cup of tea, sitting down and having a conversation, trying to thrash it out, getting a third person involved is going to lead to the right outcome. You've got to figure out in your cultural narrative what are the things that are going to get rewarded, and that's what is going to drive the behaviors that people then take to resolve that situation. And if you want people to resolve that situation, you have to reward the behaviors that you associate with the way you want it solved. And often that's not the case in most organizations.
And I mean, wasn't Simon Sinek who said, like when you have this like performance-based issue, and it kind of alludes to what you were saying about earlier about like, oh, this person's father might have died, or they may be going for a breakup or whatever, etc. Whatever life decision happens, right? I just used two as the example. But it was, how does a leader approach that? Do they say, hey, there's two approaches, right? One is, hey, I've noticed your performances are you okay? Like, what's going on? Like, can we talk about it? And then there's the other, like, how dare you? What are you doing? It's that kind of thing. And I think, for me, the way I see the culture going, which I don't think is a bad thing, is more caring, but I think we need to be careful with how caring we go, if that makes sense. Like, we don't want to push it too far where it's like people can kind of get away with quote-unquote murder just because, you know what I mean? Because,
couple of things there. Firstly, looking at it purely financially, if we're in that situation and the person's performance has dropped, yeah, if we keep pushing them, it's going to take a lot longer for their performance to bounce back. If we decide they shouldn't be in our organization, it's going to cost us at least a year's salary to replace them, hiring, training, etc., etc. If we give them 3 weeks off, it's going to cost us peanuts, and they're probably going to come back ready to go. So there's that financial. The other side of it is, yes, we can offer unlimited holiday and unlimited everything and look after them too much, and people will take the piss. But my answer to that is you've got the wrong people in your organization. I've worked with an organization recently that we implemented unlimited holidays, and the directors are like, well, I'm scared now because nobody's going to come in. 3 months after we implemented it, productivity had gone up 40% and revenue had gone up massively. Not a single person had handed in their notice. So staff turnover had gone down to 0 in 3 months. Because they had the right people that wanted to do the job, they just needed to be treated like adults. So, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying every company should go out tomorrow and implement that policy, because 90% of companies do not have the right people in the right places with the right attitude yet. So you've got to go through that process first. But if you've managed to recruit well and you've got the right people in, give them 3 weeks off. Be as kind as you can, because they will come back and they will give you everything. They absolutely will. And, like I say, 3 weeks off costs us nothing. in comparison to what it would cost us to replace that person, or if we kept whipping them and their productivity just never came back to where it was. What we ultimately want is we want that person back at their desk being as productive as possible, as cheaply as possible. That's what we want. And the best way to do that is to give them the space they need to grieve.
No, absolutely. I completely agree. And I think, for me, as the key takeaway there, I think it's very important to have a culture and understand what your culture is, but also it's very business personal related, right? So there isn't a one size fits all concept here. It's very specific in regards to what you do, how you do it, etc., and it has to be something you continue.
Absolutely. And I think we've got to understand that a business is nothing more than relationships with purpose. That is all it is. People come together to get shit done. The shit varies and the done varies, but essentially it's relationships with purpose. And the bottom line is the same with in life. Every single relationship is different. I've seen some relationships that have lasted 60 years and they argue like cat and dog and they love it and they love each other. If I was in that relationship, I'd be terrified every day. I don't have that. I've got a different relationship. And it's the same with every business. Those relationships are going to be different, business to business to business. But the bottom line is it's relationships with purpose.
But isn't that and as a final point, because I'm over time, but isn't that where the consistent work on oneself and then one's relationships around them comes from? That's why that's important, because everyone is different, because everyone is going to change, because me today is not going to be the same as me tomorrow, and so on. That's why, right? So something I like or don't like or had an issue with 6 months ago, 12 months ago, 15 months ago, or whatever, isn't necessarily.
And this is why we talk about, and this is probably a good place to land, is do not hire people that fit your culture. Hire people that contribute to your culture. This is how we get diversity. We hire people that are going to bring a new color to it, or a new thought to it, or a new way of working to it. They're totally behind the values. They get excited when you talk about what we do. But when they bring a new dimension to it. They bring a bit more life to it. And over time, you get this beautiful oak tree that grows in different directions, in different ways, with different parts, and they all add to the beauty of it. But individually, they're all beautiful as well. But they're not all just one straight. You know what I mean? We've got to hire people that are going to contribute to the culture in different ways. And that's where, yes, over time I'm going to change and I'm going to morph, but your heart over time is going to be the same on those four things: about fulfillment, about control, about joy, about love. That's unlikely to change. The way you express that, the way the world kind of gives you avenues to adventure in that space, it's going to be different.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I completely agree. And I think that's where the transparency element comes from, right? That's why being transparent with how one feels, what one needs, etc., in any relationship, especially in a professional one, though, is important, right? Because then when times get harder, then when someone can't pay an invoice or whatever, or there is issues, you can have that open conversation. And it's about having that conversation before it's a do or die situation. It's about trying to get on top of it as it becomes a problem. That doesn't mean you're not going to get to do or die. That doesn't mean you're not going to get to okay, this actually needs to get resolved like in 2 days, or we're in a bit of trouble here, boys. It doesn't mean that you're going to prevent that. It just means you have a higher likelihood to prevent that reality.
You can also plan. You can also plan early. If you leave it to the last minute and I'm like, damn it, I need that invoice to pay these bills. If you tell me 3 weeks ago, I'm like, okay, I need to figure out. I need to go and talk to the people whose bills I need to pay, have a conversation with them, see if we can push that. You can solve it a lot easier.
No, absolutely. I mean, as a final point, just to wrap up, I like to give the guest an opportunity to ask me a question, throw in a topic, etc., to discuss. You don't have to. Is there anything you want to discuss? Because I think for me, that's a lot of what I wanted to talk about in regards to culture, and it was really valuable. So thank you, firstly. But is there anything you want?
I would like to ask, and I tend to ask a lot of organisations this: have you had to fire clients? Have you dared to do that? And if so, why? What was the reason you fired those clients? What was it that caused you to go, I don't want to work in this space anymore?
For me, it kind of comes back to what do I expect in respect to communication, time, values, etc., right? In respect to what am I expecting from that client? Yes, I'm providing them a service. Yes, they're providing me an invoice and financial return for that service. Sure, fine. But if I'll give you a very quick example. They don't specifically if my value is we need to have a pre-production conversation to have a conversation about the video before we do the video, in my case, and then they're always making excuses or can't have that conversation. then I'm going to fire them and I'm not going to work with them, because I've just told you, you're not going to like the video if we don't talk about the video. If you're not giving me the time to talk about the video,
the quality of your work is going to suffer because they're not giving you what you need.
It's got nothing to do with the fact that I can't give you what you want. It's because you haven't told me what you want. Right? If I don't know you want it to be shot this way, or I don't know you want it to shot this feel, or we're shooting this thing, then of course you're going to get a guess, because what other option do I have? Right? What other option do I personally have as a videographer, as a content creator, whatever? I have to then guess upon previous information, previous stuff that I believed you liked. It's a very difficult place to work, and I think that in general, and again, it's a core thing that is really key to me, is also understanding that when it's not working, and also be willing to say, let's step back, let's work on this. If we want to have a renegotiation, let's have that renegotiation. If not, let's part ways, because okay, that's life. Sometimes that happens. Not everyone is meant to be with everyone forever. That's cool, right? But the facts is, if you don't communicate why, how, when, what, it's going to be very difficult, painful, potentially vile, potentially issuey. That's where that's going to come from, because you don't have there is no communication. People aren't being transparent. They're not being communicated. So it's a very simple answer. Yes, I have. Is it an easy thing to do? No. Is it fun? No. Is it necessary? Absolutely, right? Because you will, and again, it brings you back to the Snoop Dogg.
It comes down again to that hard conversation. These are the values. This is the way I'm going to operate, and sometimes we've got to pay the price for that in the pain of the emotion that we've got to go through.
Also, it brings me back to the Snoop Dogg analogy, which is, sometimes people's paths are separate. Sometimes we're meant to come back together at a certain point later on down the line. However, right now, the only thing is I'm trying to go up, and they are potentially going to pull me down with their behavior, with their reality, with whatever. Okay, it's up to you whether you're willing to sacrifice your growth, to sacrifice your potential for that person, organization, business, client, whatever, or not, right? For me, in most cases, it's not, because everything else will come, everything else will look after itself. But as I say, I really appreciate the time, and I think it's a great place to end as a final point for people. But for those people who want to potentially get you in to talk about culture, they want to continue this conversation outside of this piece of content, where's best for them to do that, Ben?
If you get onto Google and you search for The Culture Guy, I'll be there right at the top.
Thanks so much, ladies and gents, for coming back and joining me once again. I hope you took value from that episode. If you did, I'd love to hear what you think in the comment section down below. I'll be back very, very soon with some brand new content, talking about marketing, talking about how you can continue to grow your business in this interesting economic climate that we find ourselves. But thank you so much for coming back again. Once again, I'll see you very, very soon.